The stars looked different from the command deck of the Sejong. Commander Taemin had seen them 1,000 times before, but today they seemed colder somehow, more distant. He stood with his hands behind his back, watching the view screen as the massive alien station grew larger with each passing second. "We're being scanned again," Hana said from her position at the tactical console. Her voice was steady, but Taemin could hear the edge of tension underneath. "That's the 5th time in 10 minutes. "Let them scan," Taemin replied. "We have nothing to hide." The communications officer, Dong Ha, looked up from his station. "Sir, they're responding to our hail. Putting it on screen now." The view screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at something that belonged in Earth's ancient history museums. The creature was reptilian, covered in thick scales that seemed to shift between green and brown. Its eyes were large and cold, with vertical pupils that reminded Taemin of a snake. When it spoke, its voice came through the translator as a series of harsh clicks and hisses. "You are the representatives of the species called human?" the creature asked. "Yes," Taemin said, stepping forward. "I am Commander Taemin of the United Earth Defense Force. We come in peace, seeking to establish diplomatic relations with the Valor Collective." The creature stared at him for a long moment. Then, to Taemin's surprise, it seemed to lose interest. Its eyes moved past him, scanning the bridge of the Sejong, with what could only be described as boredom. "You may dock at Port 7, the creature said. "Ambassador Kyung-soo will be escorted to the council chamber. Your vessel will remain at the docking port. Do not deviate from the designated path." The screen went dark before Taemin could respond. "Well," Hana said quietly, "that was friendly." The docking procedure took another hour. When they finally stepped off the Sejong and onto the alien station, Taemin felt his stomach tighten. The station was enormous, easily 10 times the size of humanity's largest orbital platform. The corridors were wide and tall, clearly built for beings much larger than humans. Everything was made of some kind of dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their escort was another Valor, this one wearing what appeared to be some kind of military uniform. It said nothing as it led them through the winding corridors. Taemin noticed that other aliens they passed barely glanced at the human delegation. A few looked at them with something like curiosity, but most simply ignored them. The council chamber was a massive circular room with a domed ceiling that showed a projection of the galaxy. Dozens of Valor sat in raised seats around the perimeter, looking down at a small platform in the center. Ambassador Kyung-soo, a career diplomat with 30 years of experience, walked to the platform with his head held high. Taemin and the others were directed to stand at the edge of the room. "State your purpose," a voice boomed from above. Taemin couldn't tell which of the Valor was speaking. Kyung-soo cleared his throat. "Honored members of the Valor Collective, humanity comes before you today to—" "We have already scanned your species and your technology," the voice interrupted. "We know what you are. The question is why you have come to our space." Kyung-soo paused, clearly thrown off his prepared speech. We seek peaceful relations. Trade, cultural exchange, mutual defense agreements." "Mutual defense?" Another voice, this one with a tone that might have been amusement. "Against what exactly would you defend us?" There was a sound from the assembled Valor that Taemin realized with growing unease was laughter. Kyung-soo pressed on. "We may be a young species, but we have much to offer. Our scientists have made significant advances in—" "You have made advances in nothing," a third voice said flatly. "Your technology is primitive. Your ships are slow and poorly armed. Your biology is weak. You have no natural defenses, no armor, no weapons. You are soft creatures living on a single world in an unremarkable system." Taemin felt his jaw clench. Beside him, Hana's hand moved toward her sidearm before she caught herself. A massive Valor stood from its seat. This one wore more elaborate armor than the others, with markings that suggested high rank. "I am War Prime Velkash," it announced. "I have conquered 17 worlds in the name of the collective. I have faced 23 different species in battle. I have seen strong races and weak ones. You, humans, are among the weakest I have encountered." The chamber fell silent. "However," Velkash continued, "the collective is not without mercy. We offer you a choice. Submit to our rule, become a vassal state, and you will be protected. We will guide your development. In exchange, you will provide resources and labor as required." "And if we refuse?" Kyung-soo asked quietly. Velkash tilted its head. "Then you will be eliminated. Not because you are a threat, you are not, but because we do not tolerate defiance. You have 30 of your Earth days to decide. This audience is concluded." The journey back to the Sejong was silent. No one spoke until they were safely aboard and the ship had detached from the station. Only when they were underway, heading back toward Earth, did Taemin allow himself to slump into his command chair. "They didn't even take us seriously," Dong-ha said, his voice bitter. "We were like insects to them." "They scanned us 5 times, Hana said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. She was staring at her console, her fingers moving across the controls. 5 times they scanned our ship. But look at this. She transferred her data to the main screen. Lines of information scrolled past, technical readouts that meant little to Taemin. "What are we looking at?" he asked. "Our stealth systems," Hana replied. "The ones we installed last year, the experimental ones." She looked up and there was something strange in her eyes. "They never detected them. Not once. I watched their scan patterns. They were so focused on our engines, our weapons, our hull composition. They never even looked for stealth technology." "Why would they?" Dong-ha asked. "They think we're primitive." "Exactly," Hana said. "They think we're primitive, so they didn't bother with a complete scan. They saw what they expected to see and stopped looking." Taemin leaned forward, suddenly interested. "Are you saying they missed something?" "I'm saying they were so busy dismissing us that they didn't do their job properly," Hana said. "I'm saying their arrogance made them careless." The command deck fell quiet again, but this time the silence felt different, thoughtful instead of defeated. "We need to report this to Earth Command," Taemin said finally. "All of it. What they said, how they acted, and what they missed." He looked at each of his officers in turn. 30 days. That's what we have to prepare." "Prepare for what?" Dong-ha asked. "Sir, you heard them. They've conquered 23 species. They have technology we can't match. If we refuse their terms, then we fight," Taemin said quietly. "We fight, and we make sure it's not the kind of fight they expect." As the Sejong jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading back toward Earth, Taemin stared at the stars one more time. The Valor thought humanity was weak, invisible, not worth their full attention. Perhaps, he thought, that could be turned into an advantage. Perhaps being overlooked was the first step to survival. The emergency session of the United Earth Defense Council lasted for 18 hours. In a massive chamber buried beneath Geneva, representatives from every nation on Earth argued about humanity's response to the Valor ultimatum. The air was thick with tension and the smell of too many people in one place for too long. General Soo-jin slammed her hand on the table. "We cannot submit. Once we become vassals, we lose everything. Our freedom, our future, our dignity. We might as well be slaves." "Better slaves than extinct," countered Jae-sung, a senior politician from the Pacific Coalition. "You heard Commander Taemin's report. The Valor have destroyed 23 civilizations. 23! What makes you think we can be the exception?" "Because we have to be," Soo-jin shot back. "Because if we don't fight, we've already lost." Taemin watched the debate from his seat along the wall. He had delivered his report 6 hours ago and had been answering questions ever since. Now he was simply tired, his mind still processing everything that had happened aboard the Valor station. The head of the council, Director Minho, raised his hand for silence. Commander Taemin, you were there. You saw them. In your professional opinion, do we have any chance at all? Everyone turned to look at him. Taemin stood slowly, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. Militarily? No, he said bluntly. They have more ships, better weapons, stronger shields. In a straight fight, we lose. Badly. Jae-sung spread his hands. There! You see? We have no choice but to... But it won't be a straight fight, Taemin continued. The Valor think we're weak. They think we're primitive. They didn't even bother to scan our ships properly. That arrogance, that's something we can use. How? Director Minho asked. I don't know yet, Taemin admitted. But I know someone who might. That someone was Captain Hana, who was already working around the clock with Earth's top scientists and engineers. Taemin found her in a laboratory complex in Seoul, standing in front of a holographic display that showed the Sejong scan logs. You need to sleep, Taemin said. I'll sleep when I'm dead, Hana replied without looking away from the display. Which might be in 30 days, so I'm trying to make the time count. Despite everything, Taemin smiled. What have you found? Hana gestured at the hologram, and it shifted to show different images. The Valor scans were powerful but predictable. They looked for engines, weapons, hull strength, life support, standard military assessment, but they never varied their scan frequencies. They never checked for anything unusual. She pulled up another image. This is our stealth ship prototype, the HFY Sun Sin. It's been in testing for 2 years. The Valor scans passed right over it when we had it docked in the Sejong shuttle bay. They never saw it. One stealth ship won't win a war, Taemin said. No, but 50 might change the game, Hana replied. Engineer Sung-ho thinks he can retrofit 30 of our existing ships with enhanced stealth systems in 3 weeks. It won't make them invisible, but it will make them hard to track. And if we can build 20 more from scratch, that's still only 50 ships against what, 200? 300? Admiral Taemin, Hana said, and he noticed she had used his new rank before he had even been officially promoted. You said it yourself. This won't be a straight fight. We can't win by playing their game. We need to make them play ours. The council meeting reconvened the next morning. This time the debate was shorter. Director Minho called for a vote. All those in favor of submitting to Valor rule? 23 hands rose. All those in favor of military resistance? 41 hands rose. Then it's decided, Minho said heavily. May whatever gods each of us believes in have mercy on our species. The news spread across Earth within hours. There was panic in some cities, defiance in others. Recruitment centers for the Defense Force were overwhelmed. Young people lined up by the thousands, wanting to serve, wanting to fight. Some came out of patriotism, others out of rage at the Valor's dismissal of humanity. More than a few simply wanted to matter, to be part of something bigger than themselves. Taemin was promoted to admiral and given command of all human space forces. It was an honor he would have gladly refused if he could. Standing in his new office overlooking the construction yards in orbit, he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him like a physical force. Dong-ha appeared in his doorway. Sir, we've intercepted more Valor communications. I've translated what I could. And? They're sending a fleet, 207 warships, but here's the interesting part. They're calling it a standard subjugation force. This is what they normally send against primitive worlds. Only 200 ships, Taemin said quietly. They really don't think we're a threat. There's more, Dong-ha continued. War Prime Velkash isn't coming himself. He's sending someone called Fleet Commander Drathos. From what I can gather, Drathos is relatively inexperienced. He's never commanded a major fleet before. They're sending their junior officers, Taemin said. This is a training exercise for them. It gets better, Dongha said, and there was a strange note in his voice. I hacked into their database. Well, hacked is too strong a word. Their security is terrible. They never expected anyone to try. He pulled up a file on his tablet. This is the Valor Intelligence Report on Humanity. 3 pages. 3 pages, Admiral. Their report on the last species they conquered was 74 pages long. Taemin took the tablet and read. The report was cursory at best. Basic biological data, a rough overview of human technology, some statistics about Earth's population and resources. There was nothing about human history, nothing about human psychology, nothing about how humans waged war. They know nothing about us, Taemin said slowly. Nothing that matters, Dongha agreed. They never studied us. They just scanned us, decided we were weak, and moved on. For the first time since the meeting aboard the Valor station, Taemin felt something like hope stir in his chest. In orbit around Earth, the construction yards worked day and night. Ships were being retrofitted with Hana's stealth systems. New weapons were being installed based on the scan data they had gathered. Nothing fancy, nothing that would obviously give away their capabilities. Just small improvements, invisible modifications. Engineer Sung Ho coordinated the work with manic energy. He had barely slept in 10 days, living on coffee and determination. The key is the shields, he explained to Taemin during an inspection tour. Valor shields operate on a rotating frequency system, but the rotation is predictable. If we can time our weapons to fire during the frequency transition, can we? Taemin asked. Maybe, Sung Ho admitted. We won't know until we try. But it's better than shooting blindly and hoping for the best. In a laboratory on the moon, scientist Jia was working on a different problem. Electromagnetic pulses, she explained to anyone who would listen. The Valor shields are designed to stop physical projectiles and energy weapons. But if we can get an EMP inside the shield perimeter, how do we do that? Someone asked. We don't, Jia said. We get them to do it for us. We make a weapon that looks like a failed missile, something their shields will let pass through because it's not a threat. Then it detonates inside their defenses. It was a desperate plan built on a foundation of guesswork and hope. But it was all they had. 18 days into the 30-day deadline, Dongha picked up the first signs of the Valor fleet's approach. They were still outside the solar system, but they were coming. 207 ships, just as predicted. Taemin called a meeting of his senior staff. Hana, Dongha, Sujin, Sung Ho, Jia, and a dozen others gathered in the war room. They'll be here in 12 days, Taemin said. We have 89 warships ready for combat. We have 47 ships with stealth capabilities. We have new weapons that might or might not work. And we have an enemy that thinks we're not worth their full attention. He looked around the room. Our job is to make sure they keep thinking that right up until the moment we prove them wrong. We're going to lose ships. We're going to lose people. But if we can make the Valor regret underestimating us, then maybe, just maybe, we survive this. And if we can't, someone asked. Then we go down fighting, General Sujin said, and we make sure the galaxy remembers that humanity did not go quietly. There was silence for a moment. Then, one by one, everyone in the room nodded. Outside the window, Earth turned slowly in the darkness, blue and green and beautiful, worth fighting for, worth dying for. The storm was coming, and humanity would be ready to meet it. The Valor fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system like a swarm of metallic predators. 207 warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. From his command station on the bridge of the Gwanggaeto, Admiral Taemin watched them appear on the long-range sensors with a cold feeling in his gut. They're holding position near the outer marker, Dongha reported, now broadcasting on all frequencies. "Put it through," Tamin ordered. The view screen flickered to life, showing a Valor in elaborate battle armor. This had to be Fleet Commander Drathos. The alien's scales were a darker shade than War Prime Velkash's had been, and its eyes seemed to gleam with something like excitement. "Humans of Earth," Drathos said, its voice translated into harsh syllables. "Your time has expired. Surrender now and accept vassalage to the Valor Collective or be destroyed. You have 24 of your hours to comply." Tamin took a deep breath, then nodded to Dongha. The communications officer opened a channel. "Fleet Commander Drathos," Tamin began, carefully modulating his voice to sound uncertain, almost afraid. "Please, we need more time. Our governments are still debating. There is disagreement, confusion. We are not united in our response." It was a performance, every word carefully chosen. Make them think we're weak. Make them think we're divided. Make them believe their own assessment of us. Drathos stared at him for a long moment, then made a sound that the translator couldn't quite interpret. 24 hours, it repeated. Not 1 second more. Use your time wisely, human. The screen went dark. "Do you think he believed it?" Hana asked from her station. "He wants to believe it," Tamin replied. "That's even better." The next 24 hours were spent in frantic final preparations. Ships moved into position throughout the solar system. Stealth drones, tiny unmanned craft that the Valor scanners kept overlooking, were deployed in strategic locations. Everything had to look panicked and disorganized while actually being carefully coordinated. When the deadline expired, Tamin sent another message. This time he begged for mercy, offered resources, suggested that perhaps some kind of compromise could be reached. His performance was Academy Award worthy. Drathos's response was predictable. "Enough. Your time has ended. We will now demonstrate the futility of resistance." The Valor fleet began moving inward, heading toward Jupiter. Tamin watched their formation with interest. It was precise, orderly, exactly what he had expected based on the tactical data Dongha had stolen from their database. The Valor fought like they had fought for centuries, with no variation, no creativity. "Launch the first wave," Tamin ordered quietly. 15 human ships, older models that had been scheduled for decommissioning, accelerated toward the Valor vanguard. 30 Valor vessels broke formation to intercept them. The two forces met in the darkness near Jupiter's orbit. What happened next was exactly what the Valor expected. Human weapons fired, impacting uselessly against Valor shields. Valor weapons fired back, tearing through human hulls like paper. In 27 minutes, all 15 human ships were destroyed. The Valor suffered no losses. On the bridge of the Guangeto, no one celebrated. Those ships had been mostly automated, their skeleton crews already evacuated, but the loss still hurt. "Did we get the data?" Tamin asked. "All of it," Sung-Ho replied from the engineering station. "The stealth drones recorded everything: shield frequencies, weapon signatures, power fluctuations, communication patterns. I'm already seeing patterns we can exploit." "Then those crews didn't die for nothing," General Sujin said quietly. The Valor fleet continued its advance. Drathos sent another broadcast, this one even more arrogant than the last. "You see how easily you fall? Surrender now, humans, and the rest of your deaths will be quick." Tamin didn't bother to respond. 4 days later, the Valor fleet reached Saturn. This time, 20 human ships moved to intercept 40 Valor vessels. The battle was longer, more chaotic. Human ships used hit-and-run tactics, refusing to stand and fight directly. They darted in, fired, and retreated. It was frustrating for the Valor, who expected their enemies to fight with honor and formation, but the result was still the same. 18 human ships were destroyed. 2 Valor vessels fell to concentrated fire from Captain Hana's stealth ships, which struck from angles the Valor didn't expect and vanished before they could be targeted. It was humanity's first real victory, small as it was. Drathos' response to losing 2 ships was anger. "You fight like cowards," he broadcast. "You hide and run. This is not warfare. It is the behavior of prey animals. Stand and fight like warriors if you have any honor." On the bridge of the Guangato, several crew members laughed bitterly. "Honor," Dong-Ha muttered. "They want us to line up neatly so they can slaughter us efficiently." "Let them think what they want," Taemin said. "Every ship they lose is a surprise to them. Every tactic they don't expect makes them doubt. We're in their heads now." But the cost was mounting. 33 human ships destroyed in 2 engagements. Taemin looked at the casualty reports and felt each loss like a physical blow. These weren't automated vessels anymore. These were crews, people he had trained with, fought with, people with families waiting for them. "Sir," Hana said, breaking into his thoughts, "I've been analyzing the Velour combat patterns. They're incredibly rigid. They have 17 standard formation types, and they never deviate. Once they commit to a formation, they stick with it no matter what." "Can we use that?" Taemin asked. "Absolutely," Hana replied. "If we can force them into a specific formation, we can predict exactly where every ship will be." Taemin nodded slowly, an idea beginning to form. "Dong-Ha, we need to feed the Velour some intelligence, make them think they've hacked our communications, give them false information about our fleet strength and position." "Make them think we're weaker than we are?" Dong-Ha asked. "No," Taemin said. "Make them think we're exactly as weak as they already believe. Confirm their assumptions. Let them see what they expect to see." Over the next week, Dong-Ha carefully crafted a series of classified communications that were encrypted just well enough to seem legitimate, but not so well that the Velour couldn't break them. The messages painted a picture of human forces in disarray, of governments collapsing, of military commanders arguing among themselves. And buried in the false information was a specific detail. Earth's remaining fleet, supposedly only 40 ships, was gathering for a final defensive stand near Mars. The messages even included coordinates and defensive positions. "Will they believe it?" General Su-jin asked. "They'll believe it because it fits their narrative," Taemin replied. "We're weak, we're disorganized, we're desperate. This is exactly what they expect us to do, make a last stand near our homeworld." The Velour fleet continued its inexorable advance. They were taking their time now, clearly savoring their inevitable victory. Drathos sent regular broadcasts, each one more condescending than the last. He spoke of how the Velour would reshape human civilization, how humanity would be improved by serving the collective. Taemin listened to each broadcast and said nothing. Let Drathos talk. Let him be confident. Let him think the war was already won. Meanwhile, human ships moved into position. Not near Mars, where the false intelligence suggested, but scattered throughout the inner solar system. Stealth ships hid in the shadows of asteroids and moons. Weapon platforms on Mars and Earth's moon were brought online and then powered down, making them look inactive. "We get one chance at this," Taemin told his senior staff. "One battle. If we commit everything and fail, there's no second chance. Humanity ends." "Then we don't fail," Hana said simply. On the 15th day after the Velour fleet entered the solar system, Dong-Ha detected a change in their movement patterns. "Sir, they're accelerating. They're heading for Mars. They took the bait." Taemin felt his heart begin to beat faster. "All ships, maintain radio silence. No active sensors. Wait for my signal." The Velour fleet approached Mars in a standard encirclement formation, exactly as predicted. As they drew closer, their scanners detected exactly what they expected to find: 40 human warships in defensive positions around the planet. From his flagship at the center of the Velour formation, Fleet Commander Drathos felt a surge of satisfaction. The humans had finally stopped running. They were going to stand and fight, just as he had demanded. It would be the last mistake they ever made. "All ships, assume attack formation 7, Drathos ordered. "Prepare to engage. Once we destroy this fleet, Earth itself will have no defenses. This war ends today." The Valor ships moved with precision, surrounding the human fleet in a perfect sphere. It was the same tactic they had used successfully for centuries against dozens of species. It had never failed. Admiral Tae-min, watching from the Guangeto hidden on the far side of Mars, saw the Valor formation lock into place. He saw them commit. He saw them make the fatal error of believing their own assumptions. "Now," he said quietly. Throughout the solar system, human ships powered up their engines and weapons. Stealth systems disengaged. The 40 ships near Mars flickered and vanished. They had been decoys, drones, and holographic projections. The real human fleet, all 89 warships plus the 47 stealth vessels, appeared from every direction at once. Now the Valor were the ones surrounded. And the real battle was about to begin. For exactly 3 seconds, the space around Mars was perfectly still. The Valor fleet hung in their formation, suddenly realizing that the 40 human ships they had surrounded were nothing but illusions. The real human fleet materialized around them from every direction, emerging from hiding spots behind Mars, Mercury, and from stealth positions scattered throughout the battle space. On the bridge of his flagship, Fleet Commander Drathos felt something he had never experienced in battle before: genuine surprise. His vertical pupils contracted sharply as he stared at the tactical display. "Where did they come from?" his second officer hissed. "I don't know," Drathos admitted. Then, recovering his composure, he snarled, "It doesn't matter. We still outnumber them. All ships. Combat Formation 4. Destroy them." But Drathos was making assumptions again. He assumed human ships would fight like the other 23 species he had encountered. He assumed they would follow predictable patterns. He assumed they would try to match the Valor in traditional combat. He assumed wrong. "All ships," Admiral Taemin's voice came through the human fleet communication channels, calm and steady. "Execute Ghost Protocol." The first sign that something was different came from the outer edge of the Valor formation. 3 stealth ships, led by Captain Hana's Yi Sun-sin, appeared behind a cluster of Valor command vessels. They weren't firing at the main warships. They were targeting the smaller communication and coordination ships that kept the fleet organized. Engineer Sung Ho's modified weapons proved their worth immediately. The electromagnetic pulse torpedoes looked like conventional missiles, harmless enough that the Valor shields let them pass through. Only when they detonated inside the shield perimeter did their true purpose become clear. Electrical systems overloaded, shield generators burned out, and 3 Valor ships went dark in rapid succession. "Communication ships down," Hana reported. "They're having trouble coordinating." On dozens of other ships throughout the human fleet, similar attacks were happening. Human vessels moved in patterns that made no tactical sense to the Valor. They didn't maintain formation. They didn't engage in orderly ship-to-ship combat. Instead, they swarmed like angry insects, hitting from unexpected angles and vanishing before the Valor could respond. Drathos tried to rally his fleet, but without his coordination vessels, orders were slow to transmit. Ships were forced to rely on direct line-of-sight communication or risk transmissions being intercepted and jammed by the humans. "How are they doing this?" Drathos's tactical officer demanded. "Their technology is supposed to be primitive." "They're using tactics we've never seen," Drathos replied, his mind racing. "They're not fighting like a proper military force. They're fighting like prey that's cornered," the tactical officer finished. "Desperate and unpredictable." That assessment was exactly what Tae-min was counting on. Every human tactic was designed to reinforce the Valor's belief that humanity was weak and desperate. What the Valor didn't realize was that desperation, when combined with intelligence and creativity, could be more dangerous than any conventional military doctrine. Scientist G.A.'s theoretical weapons were performing beyond expectations. From the lunar weapon platforms, disguised as inactive installations, long-range particle beams lanced out. They had been timed perfectly to strike during the microsecond window when Valor shields rotated between frequencies. 3 more Valor ships lost their shields and were immediately swarmed by human fighters. "Target their shield generators first," General Sujin coordinated from Earth Command. "Once their shields are down, concentrate fire. Don't give them time to recover." The battle began to fragment into dozens of smaller engagements. This was exactly what Taemin wanted. In a traditional formation-based battle, the Valor's superior firepower and shields would dominate. But in chaos, in close-quarters fighting where reflexes and improvisation mattered, humans had advantages the Valor didn't understand. Dongha was working his own form of magic from the communications station. He had cracked the Valor command frequencies weeks ago, and now he put that knowledge to use. False orders were broadcast on Valor channels. Ships were directed to wrong positions. Tactical data was corrupted. And over all of it, Dongha broadcast the most annoying, aggressive human music he could find. Ancient metal and punk rock that overloaded Valor audio receivers. "They're trying to filter it out," Dongha reported with a grim smile. "It's slowing their response time by 3 to 4 seconds per command." 3 to 4 seconds might not sound like much, but in space combat, it was an eternity. Captain Hana's tactical instincts were proving invaluable. She had predicted exactly how the Valor would respond to their lost command ships. They would tighten their formation, trying to get close enough for visual coordination. When they did exactly that, Hana sprung her trap. "All stealth units execute hammer," she transmitted. 20 stealth ships converged on the densest part of the Valor formation and released their entire payload of conventional missiles. Not at the ships themselves, but into the space between them. When the missiles detonated, they created a cloud of shrapnel and electromagnetic interference that rendered sensors useless and damaged several ships caught too close together. In the confusion, human ships darted in, targeting the blinded vessels with precise weapons fire. Drathos watched his fleet begin to falter and felt something else he had never experienced in battle: fear. Not for himself, but for his reputation, his career. How could this be happening? The humans were supposed to be weak. "All ships fall back to defensive formation 9, he ordered. "Regroup and—" His order was cut off as his own flagship shuddered under weapons impact. Somehow, 3 human ships had gotten close enough to hit his command vessel. His shields held, but barely. "How did they penetrate our defensive perimeter?" Drathos demanded. No one had an answer. The truth was simpler than they could have imagined. The human ships had flown in ballistically, engines cold, using only momentum. The Valor scanners, calibrated to detect active engine signatures and energy weapons, had simply not seen them until they opened fire. "Sir, we're being flanked!" someone shouted. Drathos spun to look at the tactical display. Human ships were everywhere now, moving in 3-dimensional patterns that his 2-dimensional tactical training hadn't prepared him for. They used asteroids for cover. They hid in the shadow of his own ships. They fired and then went silent, making them nearly impossible to track. And worst of all, they were learning. Every time the Valor adapted a tactic, the humans adapted faster. Every pattern the Valor tried to establish, the humans broke. It was like fighting shadows. The decisive moment came 32 minutes into the battle. Admiral Taemin had been waiting for the right opportunity, watching the patterns, looking for the opening he needed. When he saw it, he didn't hesitate. "All ships, target the flagship," he ordered. "Everything we have. Now." 43 human vessels from every direction at once concentrated their fire on Drathos's command ship. The Valor flagship shields had been designed to withstand enormous punishment, but not from this many directions simultaneously. The shields flickered, overloaded, and failed. In that moment, Captain Hana's Yi Sun Sin, emerged from stealth directly above the flagship. She had been saving her last torpedo for exactly this moment. "For Earth," she said quietly, and fired. The torpedo struck the flagship's exposed bridge section. The explosion was brief, but catastrophic. Atmosphere vented into space. Systems failed across the ship. And Fleet Commander Drathos, who had dismissed humanity as weak and primitive, died without ever understanding his fatal error. The error wasn't just underestimating humanity's capabilities, it was deeper than that. Drathos had never bothered to truly know his enemy. He had looked at scan data and technology readouts and assumed he understood everything about the humans. He had never considered their history of warfare, their capacity for unconventional thinking, their willingness to sacrifice and adapt. He had seen what he expected to see and stopped looking deeper. With their commander dead and their flagship destroyed, the Valor fleet began to panic. For a species that had always relied on rigid hierarchies and predetermined tactics, losing their leadership was catastrophic. Ships began to break formation, some trying to flee, others fighting on without coordination. Admiral Taman felt no joy in the confusion he was witnessing. He felt only grim determination. "Press the attack," he ordered. "Don't let them regroup. This battle ends here." The fighting intensified, becoming more desperate on both sides. Human ships took heavy casualties, but they kept pressing forward. Every Valor vessel that fell meant one less threat to Earth. Every sacrifice brought them closer to survival. The battle that the Valor had expected to win in under an hour had become something else entirely. It had become humanity's declaration to the galaxy. We are not weak, we are not primitive, and we will not be overlooked. And the price of that declaration was written in the burning wreckage scattered across the space around Mars. The battle entered its fourth hour, and space around Mars had become a graveyard. Debris from destroyed ships formed clouds of metal and frozen atmosphere. Emergency beacons flickered weakly from disabled vessels. The elegant formation the Valor had entered with was now a chaotic mess of ships fighting for survival. Admiral Taman's face was pale with exhaustion, but his voice remained steady as he coordinated the human fleet. "Strike Group 7. Support Strike Group 3. Their shields are failing. Strike Group 9. Break off and rearm. You've done enough." On the tactical display, the numbers told a brutal story. Of humanity's 136 ships, 52 were destroyed completely. 19 more were so heavily damaged they had withdrawn from combat. That left 65 ships still fighting. But the Valor had suffered worse. Of their original 207 warships, 143 were destroyed or disabled. The remaining 64 ships were scattered, leaderless, and increasingly desperate. "Sir," Dong Ha called out, "I'm detecting some Valor ships trying to coordinate a retreat vector." "Don't let them," Taman ordered. His words were harsh, but necessary. If even a portion of the Valor fleet escaped and reported back to the collective, a larger force would return. This had to end here decisively, or it wouldn't end at all. General Sujin's ground-based weapons platforms on Mars added their firepower to the battle. Massive particle cannons that had been disguised as mining equipment now revealed their true purpose, targeting Valor ships that strayed too close to the planet. 3 more Valor vessels fell to the ground-based defenses. Captain Hana's stealth squadron had taken heavy losses. Of the 47 stealth ships that began the battle, only 19 remained operational. But those 19 were still making the difference, appearing where the Valor didn't expect them, striking at vulnerable points, vanishing before they could be destroyed. "Hana, status?" Taman asked. "We're running on fumes and prayers," she replied, and he could hear the exhaustion in her voice. "But we can keep going. Just tell us where you need us." A cluster of 12 Valor ships was attempting to form a defensive formation near one of Mars's moons. They had managed to re-establish local command and were becoming organized again. If they succeeded in creating a stable defensive position, they could hold out for days or even weeks. "All available ships converge on Sector 7, Taemin ordered. "We end this now." What followed was the most intense fighting of the entire battle. The Valor ships, cornered and desperate, fought with a ferocity they hadn't shown before, but they were still following their training, still trying to maintain formation, still fighting the way they had always fought. The humans had no such limitations. Engineer Sung-ho had one last trick prepared. "Admiral, I can overload our shield generators to create a feedback pulse. It'll fry our own systems, but it'll also disable any Valor ship within 200 meters. "How many ships can we spare?" Taemin asked. "None," General Soo-jin replied bluntly. "But we're going to lose them anyway if we don't break that formation." Taemin made the decision every commander dreads. "Do it. All ships capable of the maneuver. Prepare for close-range shield detonation. Crews have 60 seconds to reach escape pods." 6 human ships, too damaged to survive much longer anyway, accelerated toward the Valor formation. Their crews abandoned ship, ejecting in escape pods that scattered in all directions. The automated ships closed the distance, penetrated the Valor defensive perimeter, and then their shields overloaded in cascading bursts of energy. The electromagnetic pulse was devastating at such close range. 8 Valor ships lost all power simultaneously. They drifted, dead in space, helpless. Human ships moved in and destroyed them methodically. Of the original 12 Valor ships in that formation, only 2 managed to escape. They fled at maximum speed, abandoning their disabled comrades without hesitation. "Let them run," Taemin said. "Focus on the remaining groups." But there was one ship that wasn't running. A massive Valor battlecruiser, one of the largest vessels in their fleet, was still fighting. Its commander, an officer named Velkros, had taken command after Drathos' death. Velkros was older, more experienced, and unlike Drathos, he had begun to understand what was happening. "These humans are not weak," Velkros said to his bridge crew. "We were wrong. We were all wrong." But understanding came too late. His ship was surrounded by 20 human vessels, all firing in coordinated patterns that Sung-ho had calculated to penetrate his shields. The battlecruiser's powerful weapons took out 3 more human ships, but it wasn't enough. Captain Hana's Yi Sun-sin came in from below, impossibly close, and fired directly into the battlecruiser's engine section. The explosion that followed lit up the darkness of space like a brief new star. As the battlecruiser died, the remaining Valor ships lost all cohesion. Some tried to surrender, broadcasting pleas on every frequency. Others fought on in small groups, determined to take as many humans with them as possible. A few managed to escape into faster-than-light travel, fleeing back toward Valor space. Taemin watched the last few engagements with hollow eyes. He felt no triumph, only exhaustion and sorrow for the lives lost. Every blip that disappeared from his tactical display represented someone's child, someone's friend, someone who would never go home. Finally, after 4 hours and 17 minutes of combat, the last Valor ship capable of fighting was destroyed. The battle was over. "All ships, cease fire," Taemin ordered. His voice sounded strange in his own ears. "Begin search and rescue operations. Prioritize our own escape pods first, then recover any surviving Valor." "Sir," someone asked, "why would we rescue Valor?" "Because the war is over," Taemin replied, "and because we're better than they thought we were." The final count was sobering. Of 207 Valor warships, 187 were destroyed. 11 were captured intact, though heavily damaged. 9 had escaped. The Valor fleet that was supposed to easily conquer humanity had been annihilated. But humanity's victory had come at a terrible cost. 52 ships destroyed outright, 19 so damaged they would never fly again. Nearly 12,000 human lives lost, thousands more injured. The Guangaito itself had taken 17 direct hits and was operating on backup systems. But Earth still stood. Humanity still existed. They had won. Dongha worked furiously at his station. "Sir, I'm transmitting everything. Battle footage, tactical data, everything. I'm sending it through the captured Valor communication systems to every corner of their collective." "Good," Taemin said. "Let them see what happens when you underestimate your enemy." 3 hours after the battle ended, scientist Jia appeared on Taemin's view screen. She looked exhausted but excited. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the captured Valor computer systems. Their military database is comprehensive. They have detailed tactical information on 23 conquered species. Humanity's file had 3 pages. Now they'll have volumes." "Will they come back?" Taemin asked. "Probably," Jia admitted, "but not with a standard subjugation fleet, not with inexperienced commanders, not with assumptions about our weakness. We made them pay attention, Admiral. We made them see us." That night, as Earth began to celebrate its survival, Admiral Taemin stood alone in the observation deck of the damaged Guangaito. Mars hung in the distance, its red surface reflecting the debris field that surrounded it. Thousands of pieces of destroyed ships, Valor and human both, would orbit the red planet for decades to come. A monument to the day humanity refused to be overlooked. Captain Hana found him there an hour later. She stood beside him in silence for a while before speaking. "Was it worth it?" she asked quietly. "I don't know yet," Taemin replied. "Ask me in 50 years, when humanity is still here. Or don't ask me at all if we're not." "We changed everything today," Hana said. "The galaxy thought we were nothing. Now they know different." "They know we can fight," Taemin corrected. "That's not the same as respecting us. But it's a start." 3 days after the battle, a new transmission arrived from Valor space. It wasn't a demand for surrender or a threat of revenge. It was a request for a diplomatic summit. The Valor Collective wanted to negotiate a peace treaty between equals. Director Min Ho of the United Earth Defense Council read the message aloud to an emergency session. The chamber that had been so divided weeks ago was now united in stunned silence. "They want peace," someone finally said. "After everything, they want peace." "They want to avoid another battle like the one we just gave them," General Sujin corrected. "We hurt them. Badly. Not just in ships lost, but in reputation. For the first time in their history, the Valor lost to a species they classified as primitive." "So what do we do?" Jae-sung asked. Director Minho looked at Admiral Tae-min, who had been invited to attend. "Admiral, you fought them. What do you recommend?" Tae-min stood slowly, feeling every injury and exhaustion from the past weeks. "We negotiate," he said, "but from a position of strength. We didn't win this war to become victims again. We want it to be free. We make sure they understand that." The vote was unanimous this time. Humanity would negotiate, but on their own terms. Admiral Taemin was chosen to lead the diplomatic mission, along with Ambassador Kyung-soo. As they prepared to depart Earth aboard a new vessel, also named Sejong, Taemin recorded a message to be broadcast across Earth and all human colonies. "To the people of Earth and beyond," he began. 4 weeks ago, we were given a choice between slavery and extinction. We chose neither. We chose to fight, and through sacrifice and courage we won. But our victory was not just military. We proved something more important, that humanity cannot be overlooked, that we cannot be dismissed. That when pushed to the edge, we push back harder. The galaxy knows we exist now. They know we can defend ourselves. They know that underestimating humanity is a fatal error. One battle changed everything. One battle announced to the stars that humans are here and we are not going anywhere. To those who would threaten us, We don't want war, but we will not avoid it. We prefer peace, but we will not surrender our freedom to achieve it. We were overlooked and invisible. Never again. The message ended. The ship departed, and humanity stepped forward into a galaxy that would never look at them the same way again. Far from Earth, in the central chambers of the Valor Collective, War Prime Velkash watched the battle footage for the 20th time. The same footage that was now spreading across every species in the known galaxy. The footage that showed the Valor, the great conquerors, being defeated by a species they had classified as negligible. One battle, Velkash said quietly to himself. One fatal error. He had underestimated them. They all had. They had looked at humanity and seen weakness, primitiveness, nothing worth their full attention. They would never make that mistake again. None of them would.